would you say that there is a trend towards this idea of community being more and more important to consumers lately?
Yeah, definitely. I do believe the power of community is so important for businesses, more and more so because as customers, we're receiving messages from like every angle, like digital platforms, we have our smartphones, social media. And I think you and I can both agree that that can feel really exhausting on your mental capacity. And I don't know about you, but I would rather someone just tell me I should try something that is good. And, I go back to word of mouth. I think that
Yeah.
it's the most credible source of finding something out that's good.
Hello, my name is Kristin Constable, and welcome to the Soulful CEO Path, where wisdom blends with strategy and success is measured in alignment and impact. This podcast is all about guiding soul-centered bosses like you through the integration of soul and strategy in business. Each episode, we explore the journey of creating a deeply fulfilling business that honors your values, nurtures your spirit, and serves the world. And in today's episode, we're going to have a bit more of a strategic conversation. I wanted to bring you a guest in a conversation that is really actionable and relevant for any business in today's landscape. So today's guest is Shannon Lorenz, and Shannon is the founder of Bespoke Market and the Bespoke Creator Collective. And Shannon is an absolute expert, in my opinion, when it comes to building an engaged community. And I'll say it again, but I've been saying this pretty much all of 2024. In my opinion, community has always been important, but it's only getting more and more important in the eyes of consumers and in what people are looking for because they want to be part of something bigger. So today we're going to have that conversation. And Shannon, welcome to the Soulful CEO Path. I'm really looking forward to diving into all of this with you.
Yes, and thank you for having me and the warm welcome. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Lorenz. I'm the founder of Bespoke Market, and I've built the foundation of my business on community because I believe that to build a strong business, you need a strong foundation. And without that foundation, when things get tough, they get really tough because you have nothing to lean on. And with Bespoke, for example, the focus on community has allowed me to sell out of vendor spaces for my markets. And this is even at like a premium price point. 40% of my shoppers discover me based on word of mouth, and 97% of my shoppers make a purchase when they attend a market. In addition to that, I have both shoppers and vendors come from all over the province to attend. So with that, I believe there is a correlation with knowing what your community wants and providing it to them is a really great way to start when it comes to building community.
Yeah, awesome. And so if people haven't been to a bespoke market before, how would you describe what your vision for these markets is and how you've kind of created like such a powerful community around them? Because I'm on your newsletter list and I know that you do these like pre-sales for your markets, and you tend to, from what it seems like, sell out tickets to the pre-sale like all the time. So you have people who are like, it's not just something like, oh, I'll go pop in and like go check it out this weekend. It's like, no, they are waiting for your markets to come to their area so that they can shop and be part of these. So tell us a little bit about your vision for the markets and like why you think that they've been so popular.
Yeah, so really it comes down to like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs' story when you're looking for something and you don't find it type of thing.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Squamish, I've lived here for 20 years, but I started doing markets, I guess, almost 12 years ago now. And I came from the Valley and there was more shopping opportunities. So that's really what sparked this opportunity of being like, okay, what can I do to bring a shopping experience here? But then really to find things that I like and that I buy. And I've always been someone who's really like unique items. I really love the feeling and the energy of shopping in person. I do shop online as well, but I do find that I find my best things in person and when you're talking to someone. And so I started to it's a journey, definitely. It's not something that just happens overnight. So, you set your vision and who knows like really what happens between when you start out and what your vision is, because things will like continually change along that process. But to where I am today, it's to really bring together a curated group of vendors and of shoppers. And I really look at those as two different community groups. From a vendor perspective, even when I like work on my floor plan, I'm like, oh, these two people need to connect. Like I know once they make that connection, there's going to be something that they can share together to help them grow their business, because I really see vendors investing in my market, not just to sell their products, but also into the relationship side of things, which can be with vendors. And then with shoppers, it's continually getting feedback to know what they like about the market. So after the event, I'm continually asking for feedback. And if that was like the one thing I would get anybody to leave this podcast with, it's listening to your community and providing to them what they want. That of course makes sense to your business as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that. And I love that you have that in mind as you're creating like something, that tangible example of the floor plans and putting people together, because that's really what the essence, I think, of what people are looking for when they are part of community, whether it be a market like yours or say a group program or a mastermind or whatever. It's those connections that they're making to build their own network. And I don't know, do you agree with me in terms of, because you've been in events and community building for a long time. So would you say that there is a trend towards this idea of community being more and more important to consumers lately?
Yeah, definitely. I do believe the power of community is so important for businesses, more and more so because as customers, we're receiving messages from like every angle, like digital platforms, we have our smartphones, social media. And I think you and I can both agree that that can feel really exhausting on your mental capacity. And I don't know about you, but I would rather someone just tell me I should try something that is good. And, I go back to word of mouth. I think that it's the most credible source of finding something out that's good. Because, there is so much out there. And how are you filtering that?
That's so interesting that you bring that up, because actually me and my boyfriend were talking about this morning, and he's actually in marketing, but I was talking about my experience with online marketing and creating clients online, and how I'm noticing that I'm drawn more to like how I started creating clients back 8 years ago, which was referrals and more like in-person, offline connections and experiences. And I'm like, one, I kind of enjoy it more. And two, I find that anyone who comes to me through a referral or because they're part of like a network that I might be a part of is just like an easier connection to make. It's an easier client to create, because I think, to exactly the point that you're sharing, is like there's so much good marketing out there now. So we can't really rely on that anymore as consumers, just to have a like fancy sales page or, an ad that looks really good. But something that will never change is someone's like lived true experience and them saying, yeah, I really love this. You should try it. And it's like that vote of confidence that you're kind of like, okay, like you vetted that for me. And that's kind of like how I see your market in a lot of ways, is like you go there and you're like, all of the vendors that are there are like vetted. Like, that everybody who's there has like earned their spot in a way to fit into this vision that you have. So it's a really good like return on investment in terms of time to go there, because you're going to have a curated experience.
And it goes back to even how I do my application forms. Like as I dive more into getting to know vendors who are filling out these application forms, I always ask how they heard about me. I'm sure you probably have that on your page as well when people fill out an application form to work with you, but it is so heavily word of mouth.
Yeah, interesting. So that kind of segues into the next conversation I want to have with you, a question I want to have with you, because I want this episode for people who maybe are like overwhelmed by the idea. They've never thought about creating community before, and they're kind of overwhelmed about the idea of like where to start. Maybe they don't have big networks or things like that. Maybe they live somewhere kind of rural. I don't know. But what would be your advice, given all your experience in community building, around what elements are needed to create a thriving and connected community?
Yeah, definitely going back to the feedback piece. This came to me like, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. I was working a really large scale event and I was sitting down with someone who was really played an important part of the event. They were on the
Mhm.
client side. And my manager had come up to me afterwards and was like, is there something wrong? Why were you sitting down with them? I was like, I was just talking to them, getting feedback. It was just something I naturally did that
Yeah.
was different than other event planners that they've worked with. And so this came to be very natural to me. And so just going back to that feedback piece, anybody can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're in a small town and you're going to some of the local businesses that are in your community to talk to them about if you are doing an event. That's what I did when I started the market. I went and talked to all the small businesses around the town and just like got to know more about them. It also makes them feel like they're included should they want to.
Sure.
Because when I started doing this, for example, there was no such thing really as like pop-up. So why would somebody have a business and then want to do a pop-up down
Right.
the street, right? And
They're like,
so
no,
that's
they can just come to my place. Like, yeah.
like, why doesn't it make sense, right? And now you see that all of the time, like
Mhm.
that is becoming more and more popular. So especially when you are, I guess, are starting on a new idea, it can be really hard to get the buy-in of other people.
Mhm.
Definitely putting yourself out there. It's not going to feel comfortable. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but people really do want to feel seen and heard. I'm sure
Mhm.
you've heard that before, that everyone really enjoys that when you include them into the conversation. And then when
Yeah.
you show them that you've been listening, even if it's through like a social media post, like yesterday I did these stories on my social media and I was just doing like kind of those like this or that. And I was doing
Mhm.
it in terms of categories. And so that they could like choose the categories. And then afterwards, what I will do is I will end up like sharing that on my social media after to show that I'm reading all of them and that I am going to implement those changes. That's also like, in terms of doing surveys, I read every single comment and I will share on my social as well so that they know that I'm reading every
Mhm.
comment and responding to it as well. And you'll learn things that you might be surprised by. So for example, I know my shoppers want to see more housewares where I'm thinking people are living in smaller spaces right now. Maybe they're looking just for more food items or, smaller items, but people are actually coming to my market to look for bigger, unique items. So
Mhm.
it just allows me to understand that better and be able to give that to them.
Totally. Yeah. That's great. And so you kind of touched on this, but I want to dive into this with people because I imagine that your first events didn't look anything like your events do now. Like anything, it takes time to build and, to create. Sometimes we look at the end result of people and we're like, "Oh, I want to create something like that." And then that becomes the like entry point in our minds versus that being like, no, you probably had some events where you had like five vendors or like, like a smaller scale kind of thing before you got to this, what it is today. So for people who might be just starting out, like not just with markets, but this goes for like group coaching programs or initial offers or in person like events, like things like that. How would you recommend people get started with maybe those like like the first event or the initial invitations? How do you start to build community from like the ground up when you don't have anything yet?
Yeah, that is it. It is always going back to that like most uncomfortable part of the entire process is going to be starting out because you are going to be learning and maybe what you started going into this vision with is going to change because
Mhm.
you're going to learn. I actually was listening to a podcast this morning and she was saying like so many people quit before they get to like where they could get to because they
Mhm.
get so frustrated and they're like, oh, this isn't working. And then
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. So it's really important to see it through. You are going to have challenges. And especially with events, that's where my experience is people want to, they want to know that it's a good it's a good event. It's
Yeah.
worth their time going to. I always think, how am I going to get somebody off the couch? And so it's a question that I've always asked myself when I am planning an event, because
Mhm.
it is hard, especially I think after the pandemic, people
Yeah.
got used to staying home. And so what is it that you're doing to get them out of their house to come to your event? And so in saying that, yeah, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard, but really see it through and do the best that you can do. And by starting with like that open feedback and engaging people and like posting on like Facebook groups and inviting your friends, like you're going to have to put the ask out there. You
Mhm.
can't just say, I'm
Doors are open. Like, where
doors
are
are
you?
open,
Yeah.
everybody come in. It really is, you're going to have to put the initiative in. And if you're looking for, vendors or other suppliers, depending on what type of event you're doing, you're going to do the outreach. You are going to follow up. You might follow up 5 times. Like it is just one
Mhm.
of those things that it's a little bit harder to get off the ground. But then, as you grow, there's other challenges. So, I
Mhm.
have a client, I do all the event programming at the Sea to Sky Gondola, and I've been doing it for 10 years. And we have a really popular music series. And I remember like crossing my fingers, hoping the upper patio would fill. And now it's like, it's full every Friday night, and people come at 3 o'clock to find a table and to get
Mhm.
there. And that's 10 years of growing something, right? So people can see it now, but where it started was really just like, again, a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of like doing a great job,
Yeah.
people talking about it, creating that experience, and always doing the best to your ability that you can do.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's so important to just like level set that at the beginning is like it is going to be hard. And building anything that's good is going to be challenging at the beginning, but like starting with what you've got, whether that be friends that you're inviting, actually going out and talking to people is so important. I think we forget that sometimes is like, oh, I just want to post like a few posts and put some like posters up or something like that and hope it's going to fill, but that's not the reality. It's like those personal, I find anyways, personal invitations go so much further. Like people can see a post, they can see that, you're doing this thing. But until you reach out personally and like invite them in, then they're like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to sign up or whatever. I've been meaning to get my ticket, but I haven't. And then as soon as you do that personal invitation, their thing comes in. But it takes that like extra effort and to your point of like putting yourself out there in order to start to build those pieces.
Yeah. And then as you get bigger, then there's ways that, you have the people that are engaged. Like what I'm working on, anyways, right now is just really segmenting my
Mhm.
newsletter less more. So if it's like, there's someone who hasn't bought a ticket yet, then this is the way I'm communicating to them. Then
Right.
somebody who has bought a ticket, and then you're able to even connect with people more that way because you're speaking to them as like knowing exactly where they're at with you. Because sometimes
Yes.
sending out my newsletters, I'm like, I know I'm asking, sharing that I have tickets for sale, but I don't actually know whether you have a ticket
Right.
or because it's
Yeah.
just in a grouped segment right now.
Yeah. And then people tune that out if they've already got a ticket and they're getting like buy another ticket. It's just more information rather than it be like value add for them to show up to the thing or whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great. So I don't know if this is an easy question to answer, but we've all, I think, well, I can say I have been parts of communities where I've tested out, right, in my entrepreneurial journey. I'm like, I want to be plugged into more communities, more spaces. I work from home. I work, behind my computer a lot of the time. So I've gone and been part of like many different things. And I go into some communities and it's not like they're bad, but they're just like really not for me. Like I can feel it from the moment I walk in or like, it's just like a different vibe, different whatever. How do you suggest, like, one of the things that is really like it's intangible, but when you walk into your markets, there's a feel to it, and the brands kind of all are cohesive, and like you wouldn't see, I don't know, like you just kind of have a sense of the kind of brands that will be there and the kind of people that will be there. When it comes to like curating community and making sure that you have a community that doesn't feel disjointed and that it's like, values aligned people or whatever that looks like, what's your advice on how to do that? So you're not just like taking anybody in those days where it might be tempting to just like fill the room, but instead you're like really thinking about the long-term vision and the short-term goals.
Yeah, that's a really good point because it can get really hard, especially with events. They do have a smaller profit margin and it's a lot of work. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be, enticing, especially in the early years, being like, this feels a little bit out of alignment with what I am trying to do, but I highly suggest just sticking with your gut instinct. So the first thing I would suggest is knowing what like your intuition, your intention is so that you can unite people around this shared vision or purpose. So have your vision strong and then clearly going back to that every single time and being
Mm-hmm.
like, does this match the intention that I am wanting to do?
Mm-hmm.
Other things that are a little bit off, but I just want to share, like for anybody listening to this, like looking for other, tips on building community. And we touched on it slightly, was just like showing up consistently. Not only does that build trust and credibility, but it will also build what your vision looks like to others so that you're drawing in and attracting the people that will suit your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that more and more is that the people who are applying are very highly qualified because they're, on my social or it's word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, once you get that vision going and you stick to it by
Yeah.
being consistent, then it will start to get easier as you move forward. And then also making sure like, going back to like having vendors connect with each other when they're at the markets. I think that's also another way that I can bring in this like unifying like atmosphere is because they're starting to connect with each other that creates this like energy that
Yeah.
everybody can feel. I've even seen like in markets where people start to even work on their booth more, or they'll like bring stuff the next morning or looking around and
They want
seeing
to like keep up. They're like,
up, right? So that is again like bringing it back, like taking yourself out of it and letting the people in your community do the connecting and do the growing because you aren't the community, it's them. Like
mm-hmm.
you're trying to bring them all together, but really giving it to them to like make those strong connections and bring that feeling of energy. Like, yes, I am the market producer, but they're the ones that are bringing that energy,
Mm-hmm.
smells, like the feelings as you come into the market.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting and a important thing to touch on is like when it comes to community building, in my opinion, there's almost like, in leadership, they talk about this like idea of like leading from the front versus like leading from within, or sometimes people talk about from behind. But I kind of almost see like community building like that a little bit is like, yes, you're the market creator and you're leading it, but it's not about you. It's about the vendors that are there and the like collective that you are creating. And there's something interesting about that around like community building. Yeah, you're a part of it and you're setting the vision, but it's not about you as the individual. It's about the collective and what you're creating, the connections you're creating amongst them, which can be a bit of a shift for, I think, people, especially who are maybe like, personal brands or solo business owners or things like that, to really get that it's not about them. I don't know. That's just my take on it, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Is you like the way to build community is to, bring the people together, but have them figure out that like connection with each other. Like once,
Mm-hmm.
like, say, for example, that you have, I know, like for yourself, or there's other coaches on here that have like a Facebook group. The
Mm-hmm.
best thing is having the people within your group connect with each other, asking
Mm-hmm.
questions, answering questions. Like you can jump in there as well. But that's really where like the strong connections happen for them is when they lead
Yeah.
that themselves. Or you go to a retreat or a conference and people are organizing their own dinners on their own and
Mm-hmm.
meeting other people that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Is a good point. And so, final question for you is just around the current climate that we're in. So, 2024, you mentioned a little bit after pandemic, certain things are maybe a little bit different. But are there any things that you're thinking about specifically in 2024 when it comes to community building that might be timely and, unique to this moment in time?
Mm-hmm. One thing that I'm working on right now is really focusing on creating a sense of belonging. So, like personalized interactions, expressing gratitude, encouraging open communication. I feel like, again, it goes back to like when you create that sense of belonging, you'll really foster this loyalty and engagement within your community.
Mhm.
So some of the things like that I started to do over the last couple of years is like I create like a WhatsApp group for everyone who is attending the market as a vendor, and so that they can talk to each other throughout the market weekend, and they'll like give discounts to each other, and they'll
Oh, cool.
order food from each other. And so you just see all this conversation happening throughout the market weekend, or if they need anything, just even bringing treats to vendors throughout the market, having like, I've done like little snacks and water, like big water jugs so they can go refill their water bottles, and just really starting to think more of being in their shoes.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to the surveys. People will always say to me, how do you keep getting better? I'm like, just because I read your surveys.
Yeah. I ask you what you want and I listen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is that simple. But yeah, just really that focus on connection and belonging is
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, so good. And I just love your examples because it shows the level of intention and detail you have in creating that experience. So, because sometimes that stuff can feel forced, right? Like these, like, exercises or something like that, where it's like, everyone introduce yourself and say something fun. Like that can be okay. But these creating these opportunities for people to connect organically, like at the water cooler or through ordering from each other's shops so they go and pick up lunch, like those are organic moments of connection that just create it's so much more powerful than these like contrived ones. So I think that's something really key to take away is like, how do we create these organic opportunities? Because you can't make people do it, but you can create opportunities for organic connection to happen.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love this conversation, and I'm sure there's so much more wisdom that we could learn from you about this, but I'm going to wrap this up here because my commitment is to keep these episodes nice and tight and short. But I do have one last question for you in terms of being a soulful CEO yourself and having a business that is in alignment for you as an individual. What does that look like, and what does being a soulful CEO mean to you?
This is going to seem really simple, but it's feeling good. This has been my intention lately. I've actually just completely changed my diet. I thought I was eating pretty healthy, but it was, yeah, healthy, but irregular. And I'm just nourishing myself a lot more and nourishing myself in a way that I come as my highest level of myself, and having my business be able to support that and my lifestyle around feeling really good is
Mhm.
the most important thing for me right now.
Yeah. It's always the like simple truth bombs that are the most powerful. We tend to look for like these like silver bullets, and it's like, no, it's actually just about people's feedback, making sure you're listening to that and feeling good. And those are
Yes.
like a couple of the key takeaways.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like I've like even just because I used to like not eat breakfast till like 10 in the morning.
Mhm.
And now I'm like eating at 8 in the morning, and I'm chewing all my food, and I'm taking the time, and I'm like meal planning. Like it's been almost 3 months now. And I would say like it took about 2 months just to get into like that habit of doing it. But I'm feeling so much more nourished, and I can feel it now that I'm in like event season, that
Yeah.
my fuel is great. I heard someone say the other day, like, your body's like your Lamborghini, so you got to fuel it well. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, totally. And especially when we're entrepreneurs and our output and energy is like everything. Like without that, it's like that is in direct correlation with the results that we create. So, yeah, so good. Well, thank you so much for being here and for talking about community in 2024. And for those of you or those people that want to learn more about bespoke markets, where's the best place to find you?
You can visit my website at bespokemarket.ca.
Okay, perfect. And I think the next one, they have a winter market and a summer market. Is that right now?
Yeah, so I have a market starting in a week today.
Okay.
in West Vancouver in collaboration with the Harmony Arts Festival. And then the following weekend, August 17th and 18th, I have a new collaboration with the South Granville BIA.
Oh, very exciting. Okay, cool. So people can check that out and the website for markets in the future. And for those of you that were listening, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this episode gave you some great ideas and got you inspired to start building or strengthening your community around your business or brand. And as always, if you found the show helpful, please follow or subscribe. And if you feel extra inspired today, you can leave a review. It really does help more people find the show and in these conversations. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about, or you have any recommendations for guests to come on the show, just send me a DM on Instagram at Kristin Constable, and I'll also link all Shannon's information in the show notes so you can connect with her there as well. So thanks again for joining us. I'm Kristin Constable, and I'll see you in the next episode.